In this video, I'm gonna show you how you can squat deeper using these very simple tips. What's up everybody? My name is Anand from underdogstrength.com, and if your goal is to build muscle, lose fat, or to get strong, then you've come to the right place. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. If you struggle with squat depth, you're not the only one. Here you can see a video of myself squatting where I used to suffer from this problem as well. And using these simple tips that I'm about to share with you, I was able to improve my squat significantly. First of all, let's discuss why it's important to squat deep. When you squat deep, you recruit the maximum amount of muscle fibers in your lower body. Now, if you were to do half reps, you might be able to handle a lot more weight, but the actual tension on the muscle will be lower, and all the tension will ultimately end up in your joints. A lot of people who actually complain about knee pain from squats actually do half reps, and when you do half squats, all the weight will ultimately end up on your knees, versus if you were to do a full squat, then the weight is evenly distributed between your knee joint and your hip joint. So how deep should you squat? Ideally you should squat as deep as your mobility and your anatomy allows you to do so. You should be able to squat as deep as you can without rounding your lower back. So the thing is, your back has to be flat, and also the barbell has to be balanced over your back. Technically, if you look at the sport of powerlifting, a deep squat is defined as a squat where your hip crease is lower than the top of your knee. So here you can see this is the top of your knee, and this is where your hip crease is, and you can clearly see the angle. Some people also refer to this as breaking parallel or squatting below parallel. On the right side, you can see an example of a quarter squat that you might commonly see at commercial gyms. This not only places a lot more stress on your joints, such as your knee joint, because all the weight is going to be on your knees, whereas on the left, you can see that the weight is evenly distributed between your knees and your hips. But on the right, you will also see that this exercise will be a lot less effective for building your quadriceps, your hamstrings, and your glute muscles because of the reduced range of motion. And with the reduced range of motion comes a reduced muscle tension and an increased tension on your joints. Now let's go ahead and look at squat depth and what it looks like on video. This is going to be the starting position for the squat, and this is considered to be a quarter squat. This is considered to be a half squat, and right about here is considered to be a parallel squat. So the thigh bone is about parallel to the floor, and when you come over here where your knee joint or the top of your knee is just over your hip crease, this is considered as a deep squat. And if you can go lower than this while maintaining your balance and maintaining your back angle, and this is very important, your lower back should not round. This is considered as a deep squat, or some people like to call it an ATG squat. Now, how deep you can squat depends on a lot of factors. So, here I'm going to share with you some of the main factors that affect your squat depth. The first one is going to be your individual anatomy. People with different limb lengths are going to squat differently. Sometimes people may be the same height, but their proportions are different. For example, with us here you can see an extreme example, but a person with longer legs is going to squat differently than a person with shorter legs. The solution to this is that you have to find the squat form that works best for your body type. For example, if you have really long legs, you will most likely not be able to squat like someone who has shorter legs with a like really narrow stance and an upright posture. So if you have longer legs, you might have to use a really wide stance, or you might have to lean forward a little bit, just to keep the bar balanced. The second factor that affects your squat depth is the actual type of squat you do. Typically, if the weight is in front of you, such as on the front squat, you will be able to squat much deeper. The further behind the weight gets to you, the more forward lean you will need, and your ability to hit depth will be lower. So, depending on the type of squat you do, you have to keep in mind that your depth will vary based on your squat. The third factor that's going to affect your squat depth is your actual technique. Now, squatting and weightlifting in general is a skill that requires a lot of practice and a lot of learning. So, it's important that you have the right technique, because if you don't have the right technique, it's going to be very difficult for you to hit depth. If you're brand new to squatting, or if you've never squatted deep before, I highly suggest that you lower the weight and you give goblet squats a try. With goblet squats, you have the weight in front of you, and this weight acts as a counterbalance, so you don't have to worry about falling backwards. Once you're able to do goblet squats to depth, the next exercise you can move on to is a box squat. A lot of people don't hit depth because they're afraid of falling backwards, and with a box squat, that fear is eliminated almost completely. You can set up a higher box than this if you're not used to it, and over time, what you can do is you can keep lowering the box until you feel comfortable hitting depth. Once you're comfortable doing box squats and you're still having issues with squat depth, the next exercise I would recommend is that you do some pause squats. What pause squats will do is they will give you confidence that to maintain your balance and tightness at the bottom. You will get a really good feel about the bottom position on how the squat should feel. And I've found that in my experience, doing pause squats is one of the fastest ways to improve your squat technique in a really short time. Make sure to pause for at least one count before coming back up. The next factor that's going to affect your squat depth is how tight you can stay in the movement. For a squat, you want to stay as tight as possible throughout the movement, because if you lose tightness, then you will also lose stability. And if you lose stability, you will also lose your balance. And one of the best ways of maintaining tightness is by bracing your core. So you want to take a really deep breath before you begin the movement, and you want to hold your breath throughout the movement. One thing I would add is that don't be afraid to lift lighter weights if needed. If you're really having trouble with lifting heavy weights and not being able to squat deep enough. The next factor that's gonna affect your squat depth is mobility. Now, the reason why we have mobility issues in the first place is that, especially when you look at developed countries, we tend to sit a lot, and you'll be surprised at how much you actually sit. It is estimated that we sit for about 10 hours a day, whether you're eating, you're driving your car, you're commuting, you're watching TV, or you're at work. You're always sitting, and the body tends to adapt to whatever stimulus you provided. Now, so if you want to improve your mobility, there are some useful mobility drills and exercises and stretches that you can do. For example, if you're sitting a lot, you probably have really tight hamstrings and really tight hips. Um, so you could probably do some stretches for those. But in my experience, the best way to improve mobility is simply to do the movement more often. So if you're squatting only once a week or so, then you might want to try squatting 2 to 3 times a week. And it does not have to be really heavy every day. You could do something like a heavy day, a light day, and a medium day. But the more often you get that movement in, the more used to your body gets to getting into those deep squat positions. Another tip I have is that even if you're not at the gym, you might want to try doing some body weight squats throughout the day. So what I like to do is I like to do a deep squat, and I like to maintain that deep squat position for about 2 to 5 minutes minimum, and that really teaches your body to get into those deep squat positions and get comfortable in those positions. And finally, one of the biggest factors that affects your squat form is the actual footwear that you use. And this is because the shoes that you wear is the only point of contact between the ground and your body. And all of the weight that you're carrying on your back as well as your body weight is on your feet. If you look at any athlete, whether he or she is a tennis player, football player, cricket player, a wrestler, or even a runner, they all use specific types of shoes for their sport. And a mistake that a lot of people make while squatting is they use something like running shoes, which are great for running, but are probably the worst option when it comes to squatting. And this is because they lack any kind of stability that is needed for squatting. I personally use the Nike Romoleos too. These are designed specifically for weightlifting. Uh, I've also used other brands such as the Adidas Powerlifts, and I've also tried the Adidas powerlifting or weightlifting shoes. I'll leave a link to all of these in the description below in case you want to check it out. But the benefit of this is that, first of all, they are extremely stable and hard, and they do not compress under load. Secondly, they help secure your feet into position. And thirdly, uh, you know, some of the biggest mobility issues that people have uh, are related to your dorsiflexion because people have tight calves, tight ankles, and this removes the mobility requirements that you need and allows you to squat deeper. And finally, these shoes will enable you to squat with a bit of a more upright posture. And as we discussed earlier, the more upright your squat is, such as your front squat or high bar squat, the deeper you will be able to squat. So, a really good tip I have for you is that whenever you squat, try to film yourself from the side, just like you see here, every time you squat, because you can learn a lot about your technique and your depth by looking at yourself from the side. If you're not sure about your squat technique, you can simply film a video and you can send it to me at anand@underdogstrength.com, and I'd be more than happy to have a look and give you my feedback on it. So there you have it. If you want to improve your squat, here are the things you can do. Firstly, you have to squat based on your anatomy and your body type. So everyone's squat is gonna look a little bit different and you have to find what works for you. Secondly, the type of squat you do affects how deep you can go. So keep that in mind when you're determining your squat depth. The third thing you can do to improve your squat depth is to actually work on your technique. And if you're not used to squatting deep, I would suggest that you drop the weight. And even if you have to do body weight squats, that's fine. And I would suggest that you start with goblet squats, and then from if when you get comfortable with goblet squats, you can move on to something like box squats and try to keep lowering the box over time and progress that way. And once you get comfortable with doing box squats, you can move on. And if you're still having issues with your squat depth, you can try some pause squats, because pause squats will teach you the correct bottom position of the squat and will allow you to stay and will teach you to stay tight throughout the movement. If you're having mobility issues, you can try out some mobility drills and stretches, but the best way that I've found is to simply squat more often. And even outside the gym, you can do some body weight squats and maintain that position and teach your body to get comfortable in those positions. And finally, the footwear that you use is extremely important when it comes to squats. And if you're having issues with depth, you might want to look at some weightlifting shoes which are extremely stable and will remove some of the mobility requirements that you have. and will allow you to squat more upright. And all of these will help you with your squat depth. So I hope you found this useful. Uh, Go ahead and try these out and see if it helps your squat depth, and let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then make sure to hit the like button, and I will see you guys next time.